Welcome to History and Mystery of the West, sponsored by Indian Art, Oklahoma, Iguana Mexican Grill, Don Hickey Used Cars, and World Imports Rustic Furniture. Howdy folks, welcome to History and Mystery of the West. I'm Dale Gober. On this episode, we're going to take a look at the life and legacy of a man who set up trading posts from Texas through Oklahoma and Kansas. He served as an interpreter and mediator between the Plains tribes and the U.S. government. He was a friend to all. He's called the ambassador of the Plains, Jesse Chisholm, and the trail that bears his name. World Imports Rustic Furniture Store at 3935 West Reno has filled their 36,000 square feet of showroom with quality furniture and decor. Knowledgeable staff are ready to answer any questions or just leave you to browse. Hey, there's nothing better than a comfortable recliner to lift your spirit and your feet after a long day. Beautiful American-made living room sets that you can customize style and covering to fit almost any decor. So if you're looking for just one special piece or ready to make over an entire room, you'll find what you're looking for at World Imports Rustic Furniture, 3935 West Reno in Oklahoma City. Hey, and remember this, we'll take off the first $100 on any purchase of $200 or more. World Imports Rustic Furniture Store. Hey, y'all come. Born in East Tennessee about 1805 to a Scottish father and a Cherokee mother, Jesse's family moved to northern Arkansas, close to what today is the Oklahoma-Arkansas border. Moving to Fort Gibson area as a youth, he found himself with a unique ability to understand and gain trust in both the white man's and the Native American world. Young and enterprising, Jesse began a career of buying and selling goods. He established trade routes and set up trading posts throughout the territories. The Indian Territory was the land the United States reserved for the forced resettlement of Native Americans. Although the area hadn't seen much change over the centuries before, change was now moving fast. Jesse Chisholm was set to moderate that change in a way no other could.
Jesse Chisholm was a trader. He had trading posts throughout what is now Oklahoma, is sort of in Hughes County, what is now Hughes County. He knew 10 to 12 different Native American languages, and he traded among the Plains tribes in what is now Oklahoma, and traveled throughout the United States by foot in different areas.
The way of life the Southern Plains tribes had known was gone. They needed a man to negotiate a fair deal. Jesse Chisholm knew the people, and the tribes knew him. He spoke their language. Now he was counted on to interpret and mediate between the old life and the new world in which they were now living. One thing about Jesse Chisholm was this: people not only respected him, they trusted him. And trust and integrity when you're working with the Plains Indians and with the government is a very important thing to have. Military posts were now populating the territories, and towns were growing up around them. Because of the work Chisholm had accomplished through friendship and honesty, both sides, the military and the tribes, felt they could trust him. It said he was a man that listened to both sides and then interpreted their views in a very diplomatic way. He truly did become the ambassador of the Plains. Jesse Chisholm died at his trading camp near Left Hand Springs on March 4, 1868. Friends that knew him placed a stone at his grave a few days after his death that summed up the size of his heart. No one left his home cold or hungry. But Jesse Chisholm's legacy was just beginning. Cattle were about to move north, and the trail he traveled in trade with the Plains tribes would open to a new kind of trade. The Civil War was over. Cattle were plentiful in Texas. The people in the East needed beef. Texas steers brought somewhere between $3 and $4 in Texas, but 10 times that amount if they could get them to the railheads and then to the cities. Before starting out on the trail, the cattle needed to be identified. Often smaller ranchers pooled their herds together, and that meant you needed to identify your stock from the other rancher's herd. That is, if you expected to get paid at the end of the trail. Days and even weeks of hard work went into branding and preparing for the trip. It was also a time when hands were hired for the drive, and it gave an opportunity to find out if you could count on the man riding next to you. By the time you were ready to head up north, you'd shared your meals with each other, slept on the ground next to each other, swapped stories, laughed. Young boys became men, but most importantly, you'd become an outfit.
Well, it's sometimes hard today to think back of what life was like in, around 1868, after the Civil War, for the first few years that they were driving cattle, in such major numbers, north of the Red River, up through what we now know as Oklahoma, which was Indian Territory at that time, by 1868 to 1871. That was when they opened up the cattle buyers were there. They had a railhead in Abilene, Kansas, and it was really Joseph McCoy in the Kansas Pacific Railroad that offered. They even sent maps out. They printed maps out and sent people, salesmen if you were, down into Texas, down to San Antonio and places like that, and handed out these maps to people who were putting the trail drives together and said, come on up to Abilene. Use this route. Come up the wagon road that Jesse Chisholm marked from the Red River up to Wichita and then over to Abilene. Use that trail and come through Indian Territory and bring your cattle to us, and we'll promise you this much. We've got now the stockades. We've got places with grazing land, pastures outside of there where you can let the cattle, feed and gain weight again after you've moved them, after you trailed them. But if you bring them up that, we can promise you this much: the railroad will buy them. We'll have different buyers, and they'll be taken to the market back in Kansas City, and at that point, it'd be St. Louis and Chicago.
Don Hickey Used Cars and Trucks, 1520 North MacArthur, where you'll always get a full 1-year warranty and free oil changes for the life of the loan. If you're looking for great gas mileage, style, and beauty, Don Hickey Used Cars and Trucks has a selection to satisfy all your needs and prices that won't bust your budget. So whatever you're looking for, late model sedans or a minivan that can carry the whole family, think of Don Hickey Used Cars and Trucks. And don't forget the working man. Don Hickey has a truck for you that's ready to work or play whenever you are.
Welcome to Don Hickey Used Cars, family owned, same location, 28 years, 2-year, 24,000-mile warranty, free oil changes for the life of the loan, and 9.9 APR. Your job is your credit.
Se habla español.
After the war, many lives would never be the same. Often families were left without a breadwinner. Farms were lost due to the lack of markets. The young men that might have possibly spent their life on the family farm now saw little hope of a future behind the plow.
When they really got into the heyday of the cattle trails, being cattle companies, from 1868 to the early 70s of the Chisholm Trail period, you really had the formation of what were cattle companies. We were like freighting business. They would engage and for so much ahead, they would take your cattle up the trail, and they would hire young men. And so what we think of as tough, rugged cowboys, a lot of times this is the first time, they all stay on horseback, but these were very young men in their early teens. And they would head up and they would move the cattle under the direction of a trail boss or one of the old men of the group that would probably be in charge. He might be 19, he may be 18. That would be it, but someone who had some experience.
Yes, it's true that when I went up the trail, I was only 10 years old. Back in those days, a lot of boys were good cowboys by the time they were 10 years old. H.P. Cook.
Trailing cattle was not only a way to help the family financially, it offered an opportunity to explore a brand new destiny.
When I was about 16, I left home to work for a bigger spread than my dad's. I don't know yet what made me want to leave a good home, but I did anyway. Rowdy Buell.
Men who took on the challenge were signing up for months of hard work, in the saddle for 16 or more hours a day, choking dust, rain, cold and hot weather, hail, and anything else Mother Nature could throw their way. Beans to eat with little time to eat them, and a bedroll on the ground with little time to sleep. But they were willing, and they were determined for a better life. River crossings, creeks, rustlers, life on the trail was never easy. River crossings were so dangerous, the cowboy often counted down the rivers like they were counting off one less chance to die.
There was a fork in what is now Kingfisher. One side of the fork would have been for the cattle, the other for maybe the chuck wagon and supplies. And we do know a very large amount of trials and tribulations, hardship would have taken place as they crossed just 9 miles north of here along the Cimarron River. That would be a good place for them to stop.
Night was a particularly dangerous time. The cattle were in a strange territory, and on every cowboy's mind was one word: stampede.
A lot of times, because of the Western movies, we think most of the young cowboys met their end, died because of gunfights or different skirmishes like that, or even with some Western movies, like there were Indian battles and the Indians were always attacking the cattle drives. Very rarely happened. I mean, the Indians knew a good thing when they saw it. They'd go barter for a few head of beef. They weren't going to attack the group and run everybody off. But frankly, most cowboys, that if they did die on the trail, it was because of stampedes caused due to weather or some other loud noise at night, or crossing the rivers. More cowboys in the Chisholm Trail area coming across the 11 rivers in Oklahoma, which was actually called the Ladder of Rivers. More cowboys drowned in those rivers than were ever killed by gunplay.
The boss was over on the first guard smoking Bull Durham in his pipe. A strong wind was blowing from the south, and just as his horse breasted an old stray yearling to keep him in the herd, he stopped so suddenly that it jarred the fire out of his pipe. The wind whipped the sparks right over into the herd. They were gone. It was night, and it didn't take much to spook those wild cattle into a stampede. Jake Byler.
The Iguana Cafe in the Nichols Hills Plaza, just the right place to experience food designed and prepared by our gourmet chef. And it's a place where people come to enjoy the atmosphere of great friends and great family. Take advantage of our outdoor patio while you listen to live music. So, whatever you're in the mood for, you're going to enjoy family, friends, music, and food at the Iguana Cafe. Your table's ready. The Iguana Cafe, 6482 Avondale Drive in the Nichols Hills Plaza.
What once seemed sleepy little towns in the middle of nowhere were transformed overnight after the railroads came to town. Small towns like Ellsworth, Dodge City, and Abilene experienced a boom of growth that wouldn't be seen again until the oil boom days. The railheads meant money and cattle. That attracted businesses and people from all walks of life.
They got the cattle to market. It was an economic decision. They turned it over to the boss. He sold the cattle. They had coin in their pocket. These railheads were a vision of capitalism. They could sell you anything. And here you had young boys. And what does a young boy like? Well, today he likes a car or this or that. Well, back then he wanted a nice hat. He wanted the best boots he could get. Oftentimes their clothes weren't much when they left, and they were in shreds by the time they got to the railhead. Literally, they would wear through their pants. Sometimes they would have 2 or 3 pairs of pants on. As one pair totally just was worn through, they just take it off and discard it and go with the second pair. And so oftentimes what happened when they reached the railhead and they had some money, they just threw their clothes away. And they would buy a bath at the local hotel, or there were places next to cafes or whatever that just had bathhouses. And then they proceeded to buy new clothes and spend the money getting a little bit of food or drink. But actually going to the hotel or somewhere that had a really nice meal, maybe even better than Mom used to cook back in on a ranch in West Texas. That was the first thing on that young boy's mind.
And then there's the nightlife. And that's what we think of often when we think of the famous cow towns of Dodge City and Ellsworth and Abilene. Frederick Remington, in his sculpture Coming Through the Rye, captured the cowboy spirit perfectly. At the end of a trail, they were ready for fun. But too much fun, or letting loose, wasn't good for the town. So men like Wyatt Earp, Charlie Bassett, Luke Short, Bat Masterson, and others made sure that the town was treated with some form of decency. But that's another story. Take Highway 81 from North Texas through Oklahoma up to Kansas. Look out your car window and you can still experience a small part of the Chisholm Trail today. Longhorns are still seen. Monuments and parks mark the spirit of the trail. Museums along the trail are a great destination for day trips. Some have stopped along the side of the road for just a breath of freedom by the trail. It's still here. It's still America.
At Indian Art, Oklahoma, 4716 North MacArthur, you'll find original design, handcrafted jewelry, bracelets, squash blossoms, and more. We'll help you create your own design or choose from the wonderful creations of Native American artists from around the United States. So stop in and see our collections or visit us online at indianartoklahoma.com. Whatever you're looking for in art, jewelry, or decor, find it here at Indian Art, Oklahoma. 4716 North MacArthur in Oklahoma City.
The history of the Chisholm Trail is still being written today. True, it started with an honest man trading with the Southern Plains tribes, and it made way for the cowboys to move their herds north. But it took one man to start it all, Jesse Chisholm, ambassador of the Plains. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of History and Mystery of the West. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you back again soon. You know, this part of the West is rich in heritage, and we're all a little bit richer each time we remember that heritage. See you next time.